It's time for a quickie. This is my new series I'm calling Quickie Edits, where basically I'm going to take a sentence or a paragraph from popular romance books and I'm going to read them through my sexual health expert reader lens. And I'm going to dissect what are the subtle and potentially unconscious harmful messages that are being promoted here, or expectations, norms, those types of things. And then I'm going to give some very minor suggestions on how we could, or how just a word or two could be changed that then change the whole meaning of the passage, and to change the core messages that are being upheld in that passage. But first, a quick intro. I'm Janelle. I'm a certified sex educator and romance book lover and a sexual health expert reader. What that means is basically I work with authors, I read their manuscripts, review them specifically through the lens of a sex educator, and then I offer recommendations on how they can bring more authenticity into their story so that it's more sexually authentic, and then by extension, more liberating and more empowering for readers. So let's dive in. Now, the first book we're going to look at is, or the first passage we're going to look at is from The Hating Game, which I have it here on my Kindle. And I just got to say, how cute is my Kindle cover? One of my best friends sent this to me as a surprise because she knows I love my Kindle and I love my smut. Yeah, anyways, I can drop the link below if you want it. It was like adorable packaging, really cute. Anyways, so yes, we're going to look at a passage from The Hating Game. And going to show you, yeah, let's dive in. Here it is. Now, some context for this scene. Joshua, and Lucy are talking, and Lucy's trying to like figure out, get more details about his family, and so he's talking about his mom. So he says, she calls me most Sundays to keep me up to date with the news of neighbors and friends I never cared about. Okay, so that is the passage. You know, it seems like a throwaway line, but there's a lot to unpack here, and there's a lot of messaging, or there's a lot of norms and expectations and social commentary at play. So let's see what that is. So, first of all, we see that his mom calls him and that she keeps him up to date about her friends, her neighbors, and then he stresses that he never cared about them. Okay, so what are the messages being upheld here? So I right away, what I see is a bit of a emotional gold digger situation. So by that I mean that the emotional and mental burden and the labor and the load is being put on his mom to maintain a relationship. So right here we see she calls him and she's doing all of the sharing about her friends and her neighbors, right? So she's the one that's putting the effort in to maintain this relationship. And that is, that's the dynamic there. The other thing I see is that he is being quite dismissive of the things his mom cares about. I never cared about, right? He's talking about, oh, it's almost like she calls me and just talks to me about, things that I don't care about. So it's incredibly one-sided. Now, I know that Josh is grumpy and we love a grumpy MMC. Absolutely. I'm not saying that, but I do think that we can keep him grumpy without, and keep his core personality without also upholding this idea that men are not going to participate in the emotional and mental burden of maintaining a relationship. And I also think that he can bring in a two-way conversation. He can take some responsibility for some of the relationship, and he also doesn't have to be dismissive of her, but he can still be his grumpy self. So let me show you one way I would recommend shifting this, and how I could recommend, or how I would recommend rewriting this to an author if I was doing an expert read for them. Okay, and I have two iterations that could maybe recommend. So let's look at some of the things that change. Okay, we talk most Sundays and she keeps me up to date with the news of neighbors and friends I never met. Or you could say I haven't seen in 15 years, something like that. And I tell her all about the shortcake I sit across from all day. So let's look. We talked. So it's both of them. It's mutual, right? And then she still keeps me up to date. And here friends I never met or haven't seen in 15 years or something like that. So it's not, he's not saying that he's invested, but he's also not saying I don't care about them. And then here I tell her, now he's contributing to the conversation. So now it's a two-way relationship. So this we see, let me get my post-its. We see, right, the emotional burden is now shared. We talk and he contributes, and then there's no dismissal. And there's even him sharing about Lucy in this. So here's another recommendation that it's a little bit different. So same thing, we talk most Sundays. She keeps me up to date with news of her friends and neighbors I haven't seen in years. I kind of said that before. And I tell her all about the ways you drive me crazy. So something like that. And that is, again, it's a two-way conversation. He's not like, all invested with his mom's friends, but he's also not dismissing them. And then he's adding to the conversation. So I think that this is a great example of how you can make really tiny shifts that then change the sexual health messaging that is occurring. Now you may be wondering, hey Janelle, what do you mean sexual health messaging? There's no spice in this. And you're right, there is not spice. But when I'm talking about sexual health, I'm talking about from the holistic perspective. And if you haven't checked out my video diving into the holistic and comprehensive way that romance books connect to and relate to readers' sexual health, click that link. I'll drop the link here, and it will give more context. So if we look at the biopsychosocial model real quick, you'll see that this really falls in this community and cultural, the socio-cultural, this line, because it's addressing very specific norms and expectations and standards of behavior that are related to how Josh, the MMC in this, and by extension, the men in our lives, how we are expecting them to behave emotionally and how emotionally available they are expected to be. And so that's how a line like this or a passage like this relates to the holistic sexual health of your readers. So I hope that you found this Quickie edit interesting and helpful. If there is maybe a passage you'd love me to dissect, drop it in the comments or shoot me a message. Or if there's a book you think that could be some interesting conversation about, let me know. And be sure to check out my free masterclass for romance authors, all about how to write sexually authentic and holistically liberating stories. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like, drop a comment, share it with a friend, subscribe so you can see the next video. But until then, have a fantastic day and keep on enjoying and embracing the magic of romance.